You know, there are many pillars of daytime TV that we still talk about years later. Some are dead, some are living, Mike Douglas, Bob Barker, Alex Trebek, pretty well all the hosts of the game shows, Gary Moore as well. But this guy stands out to me because he was not only a national sensation in the States, he was international sensation in daytime in Canada, Australia, all over the world. I think if you lived in Canada in the 1970s and you only had 2 or 3 channels, the only thing you had to look forward to in the winter besides Take 30 in the afternoon and probably 100 Huntley Street was Match Game and Family Feud, and this guy hosted both of them. So today we're going to be talking about the incomparable, the intelligent, the debonair, the suave, the smart, the sarcastic, the egotistical, of course, but he could back it up, Richard Dawson. Now born Colin Lionel M., November 20th, 1932, was an English-American actor, comedian, game show host, and panelist in the States. Now, Dawson was well known before he became a game show icon for playing Corporal Peter Newkirk in Hogan's Heroes, and also he was a regular panelist on the Match Game for, I think, 6 seasons, 6 or 7, and he was the original host of the original version of Family Feud between 76 and 85, and of course he returned for 1 season in 94 and 95. Now, again, born in Gosport, Hampshire, England, became an actor full-time in 1954. Now, he was the son of Arthur M., born 1897, and Josephine Lucy M., Neil Lindsay, born 1903. His father drove a moving van, and his mother worked in a munitions factory. His brother, John Leslie M., 5 years older, and he were evacuated children during World War II to escape the bombing of English major port cities in the South. In a radio interview with Hogan's Heroes co-star Bob Crane, Dawson recounted how this experience severely limited his school attendance, stating that he attended school regularly for only 2 years. Now, at age 14, he ran away from home to join the British Merchant Navy, where he pursued a career in boxing, earning almost $5,000 in shipboard matches. During 1950 and 51, he made several passages on the RMS Mauritania from Southampton to ports of call, including Nassau, the Bahamas, Havana, and New York. Following his discharge from the Merchant Navy, he began pursuing a comedy career under the stage name Dickie Dawson, which is kind of referred to as a joke in a Match Game, but it was a real stage name. He later changed his alias to Richard Dawson, which he eventually adopted as his legal name. Now, M began his career in England as a stand-up comedian known again as Dickie Dawson. Possibly his first TV appearance occurred on the 21st of June, 54, when he was 21, and he was featured on the Benny Hill Showcase, an early BBC television program focused on introducing artists and acts new to television, of course hosted by the great Benny Hill. He also had at least 4 BBC radio program appearances during 1954, including 2 bookings on the Midday Music Hall on BBC Home Service, and 2 spots on How Do You Do, a BBC light entertainment broadcast billed as a friendly get-together of Commonwealth artists. Now, in 1958, there was a big change in his life. He appeared alongside his future wife, Diana Dors, on BBC TV's A to Z D, a program featuring entertainers with names beginning with the letter D. In 1959, he made 4 appearances on BBC's TV's Jukebox Jury, treating him alongside Dors, to whom he was then married. Now, in September 1961, Dawson began hosting a late-night talk show, The Mike Stokey Show, on an LA channel 13 KCOP. On the 8th of January 1963, Dawson appeared on the Jack Benny program, season 13, episode 15, as an audience member seated next to Jack, barely recognizable in glasses and false mustache. In the same year, he made a guest appearance on the Dick Van Dyke Show, season 2, episode 27, playing a racy Tracy Radigan, a lecherous flirt who was a summer replacement host on the Alan Brady Show. Again, he was credited at the time as not Richard Dawson, but Dick Dawson. In 1965, Dawson had a small role at the end of the film King Rat, starring George Segal, playing 1st Recon paratrooper Captain Weaver, sent to liberate Allied POWs in a Japanese prison. Dawson had by then moved to L.A. He then gained fame in the television show Hogan's Heroes as Corporal Peter Newkirk from 1965 to 1971. He also had a minor role on Universal's Monster Go Home a year later. Now, Eventually, Dawson released a psychedelic 45 RPM single, including the song His Children's Parade and Apples and Oranges on Carnation Records. In '68, of course, a very popular appearance in the film's Devil's Brigade as Private Hugh MacDonald. Now, following the cancellation of Hogan's Heroes, Dawson was a regular joke-telling panelist on a short-lived syndicated revival of the game show Can You Top This? In 1970, he joined the cast of Roland and Martin's Laugh-In that same year. Now, there were some rumors that he was being groomed by the network to do something, either a talk show, game show, or overall what he called award show or event host. Now, after Laugh-In was canceled in '73, game show producer Mark Goodson, in a move that made millions of dollars, signed Dawson to appear as a regular on Match Game '73, alongside legendary Brett Summers, Charles Nelson Riley, and of course, host Gene Rayburn. Dawson, who had already served a year as panelist for Goodson's revival of I Got a Secret, proved to be a solid and funny player, and it was a frequent choice of contestants to participate in the head-to-head match portion of the Super Match bonus round. He was known to do impersonations throughout the event. Laurel and Hardy, Paul Lynde, which was, I don't know if it was a tribute or attack, but everybody would look forward to his answers because he would have a conversation with the player, with Gene, and with the audience in the same conversation. Had to be the scene. Now, in the head-to-head matchup portion of the Super Match bonus round, in which the contestant and a panelist of the contestant choice had to match exactly, Dawson was asked to give the answer maybe 80% of the time. During Dawson's time in Match Game, he most occupied the bottom center seat, only sitting elsewhere in the top center seat during 1 week early in the show's run. So how did it work? Brett would be top row number 2, Charles would be number 3, and Dawson would be middle row on the bottom, usually surrounded by 2 women, Betty White sometimes, Fanny Flagg, such and such. Now, in Canada, at one point, he was getting a rating of the 20 to 30% of the audience across Canada syndication, which was unheard of. Now, due to his popularity in Match Game, he expressed to Goodson his desire to host a show of his own. In '75, during Dawson's tenure as one of Match Game's regular panelists, Goodson began developing a spin-off game show called Family Feud. Dawson's agent practically demanded that Dawson be considered as host, even threatening that he would instruct Dawson not to display his characteristic wit on Match Game if he were overlooked. Goodson capitulated, and once seeing Dawson's talents as a host, hired him to host Family Feud, which debuted on 12 July '76 on ABC's then monster daytime schedule. Family Feud was an immediate breakout hit, eventually surpassing the ratings of Match Game in late '77. In '78, Dawson left Match Game due to a combination of the recent introduction of the Star Wheel on the show, which affected his being selected for the head-to-head portion of the show's Super Match bonus, and a burnout from his regular appearances on both Match Game and The Feud. Now, what happened with this? Before, he would say, Richard, I'll pick Richard. Then they were spinning the wheel, and it was like a 1 in 6 shot. It would land on Richard because some of the higher-ups in ABC were basically saying this is getting too redundant, but everybody knew Richard could connect with the contestant more than anybody else, and it was literally costing him more money. So they couldn't get rid of him, but they couldn't really continue him giving the perfect answer. Now, ironically, in '78, he won a Daytime Emmy Award for Best Game Show Host for his work on Family Feud. After he left Match Game, his spot in the panel was filled with many other stars, most notably his best friend Bob Barker, who was then the host of The Price is Right, and Bill Daly and a few other big ones were in that middle seat in the bottom, but it wasn't the same. And although Match Game continued on in syndication, or what you call Match Game PM, I think at one point they had daytime Match Game PM, and Match Game in syndication, which would be a Friday or Saturday night show, more like Rival, like, more, how Match Game goes, like, double entendres and answers. Now, one of Dawson's trademarks on Family Feud, which couldn't work in 2022, was him kissing the female contestants. Now, if you average 8 to 20 a week, you can count it up. It earned him the nickname the Kissing Bandit. Now, television executives repeatedly tried to get him to stop the kissing because it was turning on or turning off a certain portion of the audience. After receiving criticism from the practice, which also included a great deal of physical contact, such as holding hands and touching, and also terms like, "Hello, my dear, how are you today?" He asked viewers to write in and vote on the matter. The wide majority of the approximately 200,000 responses favored the kissing. On the 85 finale, Dawson explained that he kissed contestants for love and luck, something his mother did with Dawson himself as a child. Now, there was talk he might have been considered or was being considered for a replacement for Johnny Carson. He was a frequent guest host on The Tonight Show for Johnny, with 14 hosting gigs in 79 alone, as well as 1980. Now, Dawson, again, was an early contender for the role of Tonight Show host in the event that Carson left the show or couldn't be afforded anymore, a move that Carson was seriously considering during the 79-80 season. Carson ended up remaining as host until 92, but that's another story altogether with, anyway, the drama of that. Anyway, Jay Leno and, David Letterman. Check it out. Now, two of the few Carson-era Tonight Show episodes that did not air the night they were intended were guest hosted by Dawson. During one, the great actress Della Reese suffered a near-fatal aneurysm mid-interview during taping, but the remainder of the episode was canceled. Now, Reese did later recover. The other featured an untimely monologue regarding the danger of flying on airplanes is replaced with a rerun because it would have aired the same night as the crash of American Airlines Flight 199 in Chicago, which killed all 273 people on board. The episode did run several weeks later. Now, where he should have got a Best Supporting Oscar nomination, didn't get one. He parodied these TV personas, both personas on Match Game and running Family Feud in the 87 hit The Running Man, opposite Arnold Schwarzenegger, based on a story by Stephen King. In this show, he portrayed the evil, egotistical game show host, Damon Killian. You're finally getting it. In a famous line, he said he had a suicide pact. No, he said he didn't follow through. Well, they're not reliable. Who do you love? Killian. No, he received rave reviews for his performance and was robbed of the Best Supporting Actor nomination. Now, film critic Roger Ebert, who gave the film a thumbs down, wrote, playing a character as a cauldron of false jollity. Working the audience, milking the laughs and the tears, he's not really much different from most genuine game show hosts, and that's the film's private joke. But he hated the movie, but he said basically the movie is, if you haven't seen The Running Man, watch it 2 or 3 times, see how subtle it is he's acting. Now, Dawson did also host an unsold pilot for a revival of the classic game show You Bet Your Life that was to air on ABC in 88, but the network declined to pick up the show. In 1990, he auditioned to host the syndicated game show Trump Card, but that role went to former Dolphin Jimmy Cephalo. Now, this is where the controversy come in. On September 12, 1994, he returned to Family Feud, hosting what would become the last season of the show's second run, 88 to 95, after previous host Ray Combs was fired due to lagging ratings. Now, Ray Combs, either directly or indirectly, decided to take his own life, which I don't know all the particulars of this, because some say it was because he was fired, some say he wanted Richard back, but either way, Ray was suffering from psychological issues, and we miss him. He was a very good guy, a good host. It's unfortunate that we never told him enough while he was here that he really counted to a lot of us, but unfortunately, he made a decision that, he could never take back. Now, during his second tenure as host, Dawson did not kiss female contestants because of a promise he made to his young daughter to kiss only her mother, who he had met on the original Family Feud. Now, the show's ratings never recovered until Dawson in the final episode aired on May 26, 1995, after which Dawson officially retired. Now, Family Feud remained out of production until being revived for a third run in 1999 with new host comedian Louis Anderson, who asked Dawson to make a special appearance on the first episode to give Anderson his blessing. Now, Dawson did turn down the offer, wanting no further involvement with the show. Now, in 2000, he also narrated the TV's Funniest Game Show series on the Fox network. Now, with his first wife, Diana Dors, he had 2 sons, Mark and Gary, and the marriage ended with divorce granted in L.A. in April 1967, and Dawson gained custody of both sons. With those 2 sons, he has 4 grandchildren. Now, upon retiring, he remained in Beverly Hills, where he had lived since 1964. He met his second wife, the beautiful Gretchen Johnson, when she was a contestant on Family Feud in May 1981, and he married 10 years later. daughter, Shannon Nicole Dawson, was born in 1990. Dawson announced the birth and showed a picture of his daughter during the inaugural episode of his second stint as host of The Feud in 94, as he was grading a contestant who had been contestant on Match Game when he was a panelist. The episode was featured on the 25th anniversary of Family Feud as number 2 on the game show network's top 25 feud moments. Now, during the 60s and 70s, he participated in various movements, including the Sullivan and Montgomery marches and George McGovern's 72 presidential campaign. Very strong Democrat. Now, unfortunately, he died at age 79, way too young, from complications of esophageal cancer in L.A. on June 2nd, 2012, at the Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center. He's interred in the Westwood Memorial Park, L.A., and his death came against 16 years to the day after the 96 suicide of Ray Combs. Now, Dawson was a heavy smoker and used to ingest at least 4 packs of cigarettes per day, and he was seen smoking on numerous episodes of Match Game, Family Feud, and Hogan's Heroes. His daughter Shannon eventually convinced him to stop smoking by 94 when he was 61, but the damage was already done. Now, on the 7th of June 2012, GSN aired a 4-hour marathon of Dawson's greatest moments on Match Game and Family Feud, including the first episode of his 94 and 95 feud tenure. And again, most of his performances have a military background. Of course, he was in The Longest Day, that big crowd. Promises, King Rat, Out of Sight, the original, Munster Go Home, The Devil's Brigade, Treasure Island, as Long John Silver, How to Pick Up Girls, and of course, his Oscar ripoff, The Running Man. Now on television, Jack Benny Program, Dick Van Dyke, Outer Limits, Alfred Hitchcock Hour, Hogan's Heroes, Mr. Terrific, McLeod, Roland Martin's Laugh-In, Love American Style, Wait Till Your Father Gets Home, Match Game, The New Dick Van Dyke Show, Masquerade Party, The Odd Couple, McMillan and Wife, Family Feud, Fantasy Island, The Love Boat, Bizarre, the pilot episode, Has to Be Seen to Believe, and TV's funniest game shows. So as we stand in 2022, we're seeing a revival of recognition for Match Game now. Game Show Network in Canada, or the Game Network, is showing the 73 and 74 repeats on regular rotation during weekdays, and because of that, and CHCH showing 7 hours of vintage programming, we're seeing a revival in Canada of what's called the daytime repeat block and the nighttime repeat block. CHCH is even showing Matlock as part of that. They're showing Bonanza on weekends. It's very interesting how it goes about. Now, Match Game has a disclaimer. Every episode is showed with a disclaimer. Now, Match Game in 2022 is not for everybody still, because the double entendres and, you know, the certain type of comedy. But Richard Dawson, at one point, he was the most recognized British person besides the Queen. If you ask anybody about Britain, name me 2 people from England. Name a woman, Queen Elizabeth. Name a man, Richard Dawson. Richard Dawson was so popular. And my dad said something interesting. He said that could have been Peter Lawford, because Richard Dawson picked the right roles that fit him. He was always a supporting character, but he would make everybody laugh. But he was basically, if Benny Hill had a little bit more connections, because he was like he's like an old-fashioned British vaudeville performer, because he could back it up. But he could have done a sitcom, but he loved doing the Match Game, and he really, really worked hard to spend the network's money to match with that contestant. And I think, and I could be wrong here, and you can call me wrong as that, there's over 10,000 contestants that probably crossed him over the years on Match Game and Family Feud and some of the other shows he was in. I basically believe there's only one person, non-Canadian, that can compete with him as a game show host. That's, again, it's Bob Barker. Now, Jim Perry's up there, and of course the Canadian Alex Trebek, Monty Hall, and everybody else, you know, but he's top 10. He's a top 10 daytime performer. You might as well stretch it to top 5, because you look in the 1970s, what kept these minor independent networks on the air, you know, or affiliated, it was the Match Game and Family Feud because everybody would watch. Family Feud would go in Canada, I think, between 4:30 and 5:30 before the evening news. Match Game was after the morning news, before what they call a soap block, or, in between soaps. And let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. The Match Game, when it was hot, ladies and gentlemen, everybody watched. The fastest 21 minutes with 9 minutes of commercials every half hour you'll ever see. So Richard Dawson, Dickie Dawson, we really miss him. Not a day goes by I say this world needs another Richard Dawson. Because everybody that's a comedian from England is a pretender. Richard Dawson was a wide-ranging intellectual that really cared about the people he crossed. And maybe he was a little bit like Killian every once in a while, but who isn't? You think I'm perfect as a journalist? I've had my moments that I've got angry, and we're just normal. But Richard Dawson, Brett Summers, Charles Nelson Riley, Gene Rayburn, my God, what an honor to see not one, not two, but 4 legends on one show, half an hour a day, 5 days a week, plus evenings, plus afternoons, plus weekends. Tremendous. So Richard Dawson, rest in peace, and may you always, always make us laugh. Thanks for listening. Bye.